I hope you're okay today on this lovely sunny Thursday, and I hope you're looking forward to your 3-day weekend. I'm here this morning to continue reading our book, The Kid Who Came from Space. We are now on part 3. So, chapter 29, Ethan. The hairy creature stands on the jetty glaring at me, and Iggy with its big, sad eyes. Her big, sad eyes. Say nothing, or you will never see your sister again, she says. And as we stare, she adds, Ethan. I begin to say something, but at that moment, the barking gets louder and I hear voices. Iggy and I turn our heads to see a large dog panting loudly and coming towards us along the jetty. I hear a man's voice shouting, Go, Sheba, go seek Gel. Behind me, there's a thud, and when I look around, the creature is not there. But I don't have time to think about this, because a few seconds later, the dog clatters along the wooden decking. Sheba stops when she sees us and bares her teeth, growling horribly and sniffing the place where the creature, Hellianne, was standing. Susie squeaks and Iggy gathers her into his arms. We both stand there rigid with fear, dripping wet and freezing cold, as the two Jeffs come towards us out of the wood, large outlines in the darkness. It's just kids, Dad, said the younger, fatter one. Iggy retreats from the torch beam. A moment later, two men are before us, breathing heavily. It's that flaming hippie woman's kid. What the hell are you doing here? And why are you wet? Says the older one, shining his torch aggressively right into Iggy's eyes. Iggy says nothing and turns his head from the dazzling glare. We're checking our fishing spots, I say. It's a free country, isn't it? The torch beam swivels and now shines at me. The older man says, Oh, it's you. His attitude changes completely when he sees me, the kid whose sister is missing. At once, his tone switches from rude and aggressive to gentle and friendly, and I instantly hate him for his two-facedness. Fishing, eh? Ah, man, that's the best hobby for a young lad, eh? Is he smiling? It's hard to tell, because the light is still shining at me, although I can just see the corners of his mouth turned up. And Jeff Jr. seems to be smiling too. I notice he's keeping an eye on his dad and trying to anticipate his changing mood. The older man addresses me again, trying to warm up his voice, but I can tell he's agitated and probably confused by the fact that we are wet. Tell me this, son. Have you seen anything around here that's out of the ordinary? Well, yes, I say. I'm about to tell them both what we just saw. It was such an extraordinary encounter, and I wanted to tell someone, because until I do, it won't really seem true. But the threat about not seeing Tammy again, my head is swimming with confusion. There was, I begin, but Iggy cuts me off. There was a leaping trout, honestly, massive it was, jumped right out of the water. He holds his hands apart to indicate the size of the fish that we were supposed to have seen. Just there, he adds, pointing out over the water, which is a rich, steel purple in the evening light. He's a good convincing liar, is Iggy. He even adds a little woo splash under his breath, as he replays the sight of the leaping trout in his head. He turns back and flashes a grin. All trace of sullenness is gone. It's an act, of course, but an excellent one. You should have seen it. Both of the men glance between Iggy and me, unsure, I think, whether they are being lied to or not. Iggy's still chirruping away. So anyway, he says, what are you doing here? The younger Jeff says, mind your own business, now get lost. Then his dad says, for my benefit, aye, son, you better go home, eh? We move to go, then he adds, hang on, yous two are soaking wet. It's honestly like he's just noticed. Yes, says Iggy, we fell in, and now we're very cold. We were just going, weren't we, Ethan? Come on. He gathers up Susie and keeps up the cheery act until we're a few metres away. Then he drops it. I hate him, he hisses. I'm shivering with a deep, bone-numbing cold by now, but I follow Iggy back along the pebble beach. When we're a few places up the path, Iggy taps my arm and jerks his head. As quietly as we can, we double back through the woods, circling a little clearing until we've got a view of the two men on the jetty. It's difficult to see in the dusk, but they are walking around, both of them, with their large flashlights, the older one holding some sort of gadget that looks like a massive mobile phone. It's got a little screen that glows, and he holds it next to the ground, sweeping it left and right. The device emits a series of high-pitched clicks and hisses, several of them every second. What's he doing? I whisper through my chattering teeth. It's a Geiger counter. He's checking for radiation. How does he know these things? I ask myself in admiration. Then I whisper, why? Shh! The men are talking to each other and we can hear bits of it. Dad, what about all this blood? Jeff is standing exactly where we were moments ago and looking around him. Aye, that's definitely some sort of evidence, but we're looking for radiation, and either there isn't any or this thing doesn't work. He holds it up and the little screen illuminates his face in the twilight. Are you sure? Listen, son, I know what I saw. The man's voice has a superior sing-song tone. It's all recorded up at the observatory. I showed it to you and you agreed, so don't start contradicting me now, eh? Aye, Dad, comes the meek reply. Something definitely happened. It happened here, or very close by, and I've got my suspicions about them two lads. They both look in our direction, and I feel a nudge in my side. I follow Iggy back to our bikes, and we pedal home. Susie snuggled down in Iggy's jacket, and me freezing in the winter chill. Chapter 30. It's not far back to the village, but by the time we get there, I am colder than I have ever felt in my life. We cycle hard to try and keep warm. My wet jeans are sticking clammily to my legs and chafing as I pedal. Susie's head peeks out of Izzy's soaking jacket, and if a chicken can look disapproving, then Susie is definitely unimpressed by her evening swim. The clouds had gathered quickly to cover the rising moon, and the darkness wrapped around us like a massive black duvet. It is so dark, in fact, and I am hunched up over my handlebars to try and stay warm, that I don't even notice we are home until I feel the bumpety bump of a cattle grid under my tyres. I look up to see the first house in the village ahead of me, a Christmas tree flashing, its lights in the window. The brakes on Iggy's ancient bike squeak noisily, and we stop on the bridge over the burn. We haven't said a word since we left the jetty, and I'm so cold I can hardly speak. You okay? Says Iggy. His house is coming up soon. Do you want me to? No, I'll be fine. I just want to get home, to feel safe and warm. I set off to cycle the remaining streets back home, only to find Iggy cycling alongside me anyway. That's nice of him. Many thanks. I'm at yours anyway, I say, as we cycle. I'm thinking about how I'm going to explain what happened, starting with why I'm soaking wet when Iggy says, come to mine then. My mum's going to Hexham with Fat Stanley. I look at him, puzzled. Her new boyfriend, he says, without warmth. He's called Stanley, and he's fat, I suggest. We come in through Iggy's back door. Our clothes have stopped dripping at least. We stand in his kitchen and begin the horrible process of peeling off our freezing clothes and putting them in the tumble dryer. I put my phone next to Iggy's cap on the radiator to dry it out, and we sit hunched at the scrubbed wooden table with towels wrapped around our waists and draped over our shoulders. Watching our clothes go round, the kitchen smells of potato feelings with a faint hint of chicken poo from a litter tray by the door. The sink is full of dishes. The whole place isn't exactly dirty, but my gran would say, this place is a midden, like she says about my bedroom. There's something else strange as well. Don't you have Christmas decorations? A tree, I say, craning my neck to see if there are any cards or candles or anything. Iggy shrugs. No, my mum doesn't really believe in it. Doesn't believe in Christmas? I say, astonished. She reckons it's all a trick to make us spend loads of money and wants things we can't afford. And besides, why cut down a healthy tree? Don't you get presents? I sometimes get something from my dad, he says, when he remembers. And Mum gave a poor family a goat this year, Africa or somewhere. She says giving is better than receiving. Iggy doesn't sound convinced, but neither of us say anything for a long time, mainly because our teeth are chattering, and it's a while before we're warm enough to sit without shaking. Outside, a wind chime tinkles. Finally, Iggy takes a deep breath and whispers, so that will happen then, for real? I nod slowly without looking up from the revolving doors. What are we going to say, Tate? Are you going to tell your mum and dad? I tilt my head back and let it rest on the wall behind me. I think I'm going to have to, Iggy. I mean, what choice do we have? Problem is, me mam, she's pretty fragile. She'll worry. She'll worry that I've gone crazy. She'll be upset that someone even said that, you know, or you won't see your sister again. She'll worry that we went out on the water. I don't want to do that to her. We are silent for a bit as we think. Tell your dad first. That thing said not to tell anyone. But what can we do on our own, Tate? Face it, we're kids. If this is some weirdo in a costume, which it isn't, we know that. He sighs. I know. But if it is, then we need to tell the police. All right, but we know it isn't some weirdo in a costume. You know, the massive splashes, the stick thing that healed your leg, the fact that she just vanished. Iggy lifts up his leg to examine the scars again. They seem to have healed even more. I run my finger over the scar. Look, man, that's just not possible, Iggy. Iggy sits up again. And the Geiger counter those two men had. I know about it from a comic I had. Did you ever read Paranormal Investigator? Doesn't matter. A Geiger counter is what people use to look for evidence of. He trails off. I think it's because he doesn't want to say it. As if saying it will make it real. And if it's real, then that will change everything. Of what? I know what he's going to say. And he says it. Radiation from spaceship landings. I knock my head against the wall again and exhale loudly. It's as if the creature's rotten smell is stuck in my nose, and I realise why it's familiar. I had smelled the same thing the night Tammy vanished. That decides it. We have to tell someone, Iggy. I mean, this is massive. It's like army and government and air force massive. We get dressed at last, our clothes warm and fluffy from the dryer. Somehow being dressed and dry straightens our heads a bit. It's decided. We'll go and tell my parents what happened. It's the only sensible option. I'm going to stop there for today. I hope you enjoyed the next part of the story. It's getting even more exciting now. I look forward to reading the rest of it with you. Have a lovely day. Bye.